Hey everybody, it's GauntletX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today we'll be playing another Tinkerer's Cube draft, the cube full of various synergies from cards throughout Magic Arena's history. So without further ado, let's see what kind of stuff we have here. We have Sparring Regimen, which is a pretty powerful enchantment that's going to put a +1/+1 counter and untap one of your attacking creatures each turn. You also get to learn when you cast it, and they have put quite a few lessons from Strixhaven into this cube, so it's not too hard to build your own kind of lesson package to learn for with these kinds of cards. So Sparring Regimen is a card that has impressed me when played against me, so I'm pretty interested in trying that out. Of course, in Cube, there's always going to be plenty of powerful cards, tons of rares and mythics in almost every pack. So there are plenty of other options, but Sparring Regimen has just seemed to be a pretty impressive card to me, and I'm excited to play with it a little bit here today. So what do we have here? We do have Introduction to Annihilation, which is a lesson we could take, having a learn card already in our deck. This will allow that to search for a removal spell, exiles any non-land permanent, but it does give your opponent a card draw. Cetessan Champion could work well with Sparring Regimen as well, just because the Sparring Regimen is an enchantment, and green and white tend to have a lot of enchantments, and definitely do in this cube. As you can see, there's a Sentinel's Eyes here. That is another enchantment that would work really well with Cetessan Champion, because this is an enchantment you can consistently recast from your graveyard to get your constellation triggers over and over again. I think I'm going to roll with the Cetessan Champion here, a really powerful card if you have a good amount of enchantments in your deck to work with it. So let's see if we can't be green-white enchantments today. And there we go, Sithis Harvest's Hand, kind of the signpost multicolored card for the strategy. A green and a white for a 1/2 legendary enchantment creature. You get to gain a life and draw a card every time you cast an enchantment spell. And she's an enchantment herself, so she'll trigger cards like the Cetessan Champion here. So really great start to green-white Enchantress here. We have 3 cards drafted so far, and all 3 cards fit very nicely into this archetype. So pick 4 now. Now we just kind of have a decent lesson, the environmental sciences, so whenever we learn a lesson, we can grab whatever basic land we need from our deck by casting environmental sciences here. Seems pretty good. It's just a really nice lesson to have access to in your sideboard for your learn cards, just a pretty versatile effect. Or a pretty flexible effect, I should say. There's You Happen on a Glade, but I don't love putting that kind of mana-fixing main deck if it's not super relevant, and we're going to try to just be 2 colors here, just green-white. You Happen on a Glade, casting the Journey On portion of this to grab 2 basic lands is good in like a 3 or 4 color deck, but I wouldn't really run it in a 2 color unless we have just a lot of really expensive cards. I guess there's like Verdant Embrace for just a big enchantment here, but it's just kind of a big dorky aura. Not the craziest thing ever. I'm just going to make sure that I have some lessons for our Sparring Regimen, and we'll start with one of the best ones to have, the environmental sciences there. So here we don't really have anything that works super well with Enchantress. We do have the Mending of Dominaria, technically an enchantment, although this one's pretty slow. 5 mana for a Saga. When you play it, you mill 2 cards, then return a creature from your grave to hand, then you do it again next turn, and then on the 3rd form, you put a bunch of lands into play. So it's a really slow card. It just sits there drawing maybe 1 creature a turn for a couple turns, and then it just puts lands out. Not really the kind of card I'm super pumped about. I do like Core Skyfisher a lot, especially in this cube. There are a lot of good enter the battlefield effects, and Core Skyfisher allows you to return one of your permanents to your hand to recast it and get that enter the battlefield effect again. So if we have a permanent like Sparring Regimen, we could recast it to learn again. Just any enchantment period, we could recast to draw another card off of Sithis or Cetessan Champion. We already have some decent combos with the Core Skyfisher, and it shouldn't be hard to end up with a few more. So now we have Shepherd the Flock, which is another card that works really well with good enter the battlefield effects, with the Usher to Safety being an instant speed adventure we can use to recast one of our permanents. Again, that's always going to be good with any enchantment on the board when we have a Cetessan Champion or Sithis Harvest hand out. Just being able to recast those enchantments seems solid, so I will scoop that up here. Abundant Harvest doesn't really combo really at all with what we're doing. It's just kind of a draw spell, so definitely Shepherd there. Alright, green-white dual land. I always love picking up some good mana fixing for any of my decks, even if they are just 2 colors, to make our mana bases more consistent, make less games, make us stumble on mana in less games, I should say. We have Scurrid Colony here, kind of good for like a ramp deck where you'll end up with a lot of lands out, or Thraben Inspector is good with flicker and bounce effects, but hopefully we're just enough in on the enchantment theme to pick up plenty good enchantments to flicker instead. Tranquil Thicket's a pretty good land. This is a land that helps you prevent flood, so if you draw too many lands late in the game, you can just cycle this and draw another card. I do like that quite a bit. Wolf Willow Haven would be solid here as well. It is another enchantment, although this is an enchantment that's pretty focused on ramping out additional mana, and I don't know how high our curve is going to be. Right now we have 3 2-mana cards and 2 3-mana cards, so we really don't need that much mana. I'm just going to take the Tranquil Thicket here, to be honest, and be fine with it. I guess we could take Inkling Summoning. That actually might have been better. I probably wrote that card off because I was just seeing it in the peripheral vision there, and I was like, oh, that's a black card, but it was a hybrid white and a black card, so we could cast it off just double white and 1 to create a 2/1 flyer. Probably should have just taken the Inkling Summoning to work with our Sparring Regimen there, just to make the Sparring Regimen a little bit more flexible. That way we can grab either Environmental Sciences or Inkling Summoning off of it. Here I'm going to take Narnum Renegade. I'm not super pumped about it, but there's nothing else in our colors in that pack. I guess we could take the green-blue dual land to speculate on potentially being 3 colors here, but I'm going to try pretty hard not to end up that way. Definitely going to take Sentinel's Eyes here because we have 2 cards that work really well with it, Sithis and Cetessan Champion, as I've been saying. Starnheim Courser would be fine for this deck as well, making our enchantments cost 1 less, but I really like the idea of having just a recastable enchantment like the Sentinel's Eyes that we get to keep playing throughout the game. Every time that it goes into our graveyard, we can just escape it and get some more value off of it again. Here I will definitely take a Trial of Solidarity. It's not the greatest effect ever, unless we curve out with a bunch of creatures. But what this can do really well is if you cast a Cartouche, you can return it to your hand, and this cube does have the green and white Cartouche. So if we manage to pick up the Trial of Solidarity, the green Trial, and then the green and white Cartouche, we can have those cards work together and synergize well by recasting a bunch of enchantments onto the board, again triggering our constellation cards like Sithis and Cetessan Champion. So here in pack 2 we do see Calyx Destiny's Hand, which makes a lot of sense for a green-white enchantment deck. The worst case scenario on this card is sorry, I'm just really confused. This card is banned in the Immortal Sun format. I have no idea what that is. Anyways, the best thing, or the worst case scenario with this card is it's a 4-mana, 4-loyalty Planeswalker. You just -3 the turn you play it and exile one of your opponent's cards until one of your enchantments leaves the field. So you get to turn any one of your enchantments into like an Oblivion Ring, where it's going to lock down their best threat. Definitely a really good card. I guess it's more likely to wheel to get past all of the other drafters than cards like Legion's Landing, which would also be good for the deck, so maybe we should take that and hope that nobody else is going for green-white enchantments, because that would be the only deck it's good in. Yeah, I'm actually going to take Legion's Landing here. There's also an argument for Mascot Exhibition, just being a big lesson to pick up. But I do really like cheap enchantments in the Enchantress style decks, and Legion's Landing's a cheap enchantment that's also a nice early game creature. So it's just a really good role filler in these decks. So I am banking on wheeling that green-white Planeswalker there. Hopefully nobody else in green-white enchantments, as I said before. What do we want here? I guess we can take Squirrel Sanctuary, very similar to Legion's Landing. Just a 1-mana enchantment that is just a 1-mana 1/1 creature to start our curve. But the other thing about this card...
Together, we are unstoppable.
Thank you for the follow, Magma Love. I am not live right now, but I always have those alerts on because they're on in my recording software. So every now and then they happen while I'm recording. Anyways, this card is another one that can combo particularly well with our constellation triggers because we get to recast this card whenever one of our non-token creatures dies. We get to return this enchantment to our hand, and then of course playing another enchantment is triggering all of our cards that care about playing a ton of enchantments. Just pretty good there. Just pretty good synergy all around. So here we have Battle for Bredagard. We do have a bit of a token sub-theme now. We do have a 1/1 lifelinking token, a 1/1 squirrel token. And we could get a few more, not too difficult, or without too much trouble. So the Battle for Bredagard could work well with a token theme. It's also an enchantment, so it does trigger that stuff. That seems okay here. There's also Tireless Provisioner, which is just good value in general, getting food or treasures every time you landfall. Not the biggest synergy play there, but just a good card. Same with the Colony Ambush. There's not a lot of removal in the cube, so it is nice to pick it up when it is available. You know, we really don't have too much going on in terms of token production, so I'm going to take the Colony Ambush here and just make sure we have at least a little bit of removal. This Tinkerer's Cube was designed with very few removal spells, and not the greatest removal spells at that, so when you see removal spells that are decent, it is pretty good to pick them up in this cube. So Rise of Exodus looks like another decent removal spell to pick up here. It's between that and, I guess, another lesson. We could take a Pest Summoning here. It is pretty important to have a few different lessons, so you have some options to choose from whenever you cast a Learn spell, and right now we only have one lesson. And if we take another Learn spell, that's going to be a pretty big problem. But Rise of Exodus is just another removal spell that I've seen be pretty good in this cube just because unconditionally just exiling a creature, not even throwing it in their graveyard, is often just really good. It can deal with whatever you need to deal with, and there are often some pretty bonkers cards that are important to get off the board. Definitely going to take a Nessian Wanderer here. This has a great Constellation trigger, and we're definitely going for Constellation style effects with cards like Squirrel Sanctuary being repeatably castable enchantments. This one's a 1/3 that keeps grabbing us lands on our Constellation triggers. It's between that and the dual land. The dual land would be good here, but we already got one at least, since I did pick that other one pretty highly. So I'm going to take the good synergy card here, and bam, I'm going to take a dual land here. I guess we could take Outmuscle as well. Another decent removal spell here. But now we do have Rise of Exodus and Colony Ambush, so we have 2 removal spells. This is not unconditional removal. It would be like another copy of Colony Ambush here, where we need a creature that's big enough to fight. Although this one does give Indestructible. Yeah, definitely seems like a solid choice here. I could go either way between the Grove and the Outmuscle, but I love taking me some land, so I'm going to take the Sunpetal Grove here. Ooh, wow, Mantle of the Wolf is just excellent here. This is just a very powerful card, period, no matter what strategy you're in. 4 mana for +4/+4, plus when this enchantment dies, you get 2/2/2s. That's just already a great deal. And when you have an enchantment theme like our deck has, it's an excellent deal. Same with Warbriar Blessing. This is a fine removal spell in this cube in general, just another fight spell like Colony Ambush, but it also happens to be an enchantment, which is excellent for us. And there's the Calyx. Calyx absolutely wheeled, so a good choice there. Not taking the Calyx as our pick one out of that pack. Pretty happy to see it wheel there. And now we get to scoop up some late lessons just to have more options to choose from when we cast our Learn spells. Containment Breach, a great one to have, being a naturalize effect, destroying an artifact or enchantment. Whatever problematic kind of card our opponent has out. Battle for Bredagard wheeled as well, so I guess we can slap it in here. Worst case scenario, it's a couple 1/1s and a Constellation trigger being an enchantment. So we'll slap it in here. And I definitely don't like these non-land cards, so I'll take the Temple of Malady just in case we get anything black, but it's unlikely. I suppose we see a Savvy Hunter here, which is a good card, but doesn't make the most sense for us. We are open to the option if things go really weird here, I guess. Alright, we are in the final pack now. I definitely like a Heliod's Pilgrim with powerful auras in our deck like a Mantle of the Wolf to search up. Play this turn 3, then play our Mantle of the Wolf turn 4. It's also flexible because it can pick up a removal spell as well. We do have a Warbriar Blessing, which is an aura that is a fight spell. So yeah, Heliod's Pilgrim seems pretty flexible, pretty good in this deck. A great tutor effect. Just having those two auras alone, but we also have like Sentinel's Eyes, which could be the choice a few times, not often, but Heliod's Pilgrim definitely the best for our deck. Voracious Hydra is a generally good green card. If you're just drafting basic green good stuff, this would be the pick here. And the next best card in our colors is Reclamation Sage. Not the greatest, but I think there are enough artifacts and enchantments in the cube that it is nice to have the main deck artifact enchantment removal if it's also a card that isn't completely blank when your opponent isn't playing artifacts and enchantments. So not really a Wayward Swordtooth deck here. We don't need to dump out a bunch of extra lands because our curve is pretty low. I mean, we have the 1 6-mana removal spell, but other than that, nice cheap stuff. Yeah, I think again, for just considerations with our curve here, we could take another big late game bomb sort of card, because that's kind of what we're missing. Yeah, just a big old Harmonious Archon, just a generally powerful card. 4/5 flyer that makes everything else a 3/3 as long as it's on the board, and spits out 2 creatures, which will be 3/3s as long as that remains. Ulvenwald Mysteries. This is a brand new to Arena card. Whenever a non-token creature dies, investigate. When you sacrifice those clues, you get to create a 1/1 soldier. It seems okay, but probably a bit slow. I definitely like the green-white dual land. Really like Faith's Fetters, just another removal spell, this one being an enchantment and an aura, so we could search it up with Heliod's Pilgrim. I think it's going to be Faith's Fetters here. Again, as I've said before, taking good removal is always great. And this is good removal that also synergizes with what we're doing, so that puts it even higher on the pick order. Ooh, here we go. Blessed Spirits. A 3-mana 2/2 flyer that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever we cast an enchantment spell, so it just keeps getting bigger throughout the game, especially in our deck. Blessed Spirits will fit nicely into here. There's also Colossification, but this is a ton of mana, so it's a very slow card. You have to play this on turn 7, and it taps whatever you played it on, so you don't get to attack with it immediately. So just a really, really slow card that generally I wouldn't play. Because it also doesn't give any form of evasion. There's no trample getting added, so your 20/20 can just get chump blocked by a 1/1. Not the greatest card ever there. So we do have a couple lessons now, so I guess Professor of Symbology would be decent here. But we also have a really powerful aura on Sarah's Wings, giving +1/+1, flying, vigilance, and lifelink. There's Devouring Tendrils for another fight kind of removal spell. Whenever your creature deals damage equal to its power to an opposing creature. I think I'm just going to slam in on Sarah's Wings in here, though. Just a super powerful aura. We actually do really need some more creatures. I should have been looking at the creature count. Your standard draft deck has about 17 creatures. We have 11 right now, so we're very low on the creature count. Sometimes that's okay if you're a more controlling deck. But I definitely want to have enough creatures to consistently slap our auras onto, so here I even think I'm going to take a Monoskellion, just kind of a mediocre creature for our deck, just to have more creatures in here so that we can consistently cast our auras like the On Sarah's Wings that we just picked up there. We definitely want to make sure we have a high enough creature count for that stuff. So Introduction to Prophecy for another lesson, Clarion Spirit for another cheap creature, or Bestial Menace for a few expensive creatures, a few tokens there. I think I want the cheap creature here, Clarion Spirit, and Clarion Spirit works really well with 1-mana cards, and we have 5 1-mana cards, so it's pretty possible that we actually get to spit out some 1/1 flyers with this card by casting 2 spells in 1 turn. So Clarion Spirit actually does strike me as something pretty good here. So we have Thriving Heath. I guess Nettlecyst is a creature. It's not just an equipment. Yeah, get another creature in here, slap a Nettlecyst in. This is a creature with power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts and enchantments we control. And then, of course, it's an equipment we get to move around as needed later on. So pretty good there. Reclamation Sage, another good filler creature. And look, now our creature problem is all but solved here. We have 14 creatures plus a Nettlecyst that's basically a creature. Battle for Bredegard, that's some tokens. We're basically at the recommended 17 creatures for your standard limited deck here, and we even get some more dual lands. The green-white pathway coming to us, pick 11 here, pretty happy about that. Although it would be fun to try out the Ovenwald Mysteries. This seems okay. Definitely if you're playing like a token deck that has cards that'll double the amount of tokens you have, then that card could be really good, because then you double up your clue tokens and your 1/1 tokens. So, looks like a solid card, but just not incredible for our deck. So I would probably end up cutting it over something else. So let's see what we've got here. We actually did get 2 lessons, Containment Breach and Environmental Sciences, so our learn spells are pretty okay here. Had some opportunities to pick up more lessons, but I was just more excited about the cards that we could have put in our main deck. So maybe that's not drafting the learn and lesson cards as ideally as possible, but I think I'll enjoy how our deck ended up more with the cards that I took over those. So we need to cut 5 cards here to get down to a 40-card deck with 17 lands in it, and I think I absolutely will. Oh, you know, the other thing I wasn't considering with our creature count is we do have Legion's Landing, which is basically a 1-mana 1/1, and Squirrel Sanctuary, which is basically a 1-mana 1/1. So our creature count actually a bit higher than it seemed. So we can probably cut a creature or 2, and I definitely want to, because we have some creatures that don't make a ton of sense in here, like Narnum Renegade, Fairy Guide Mother. We have definitely some creatures in here that are just random creatures for creature's sakes. Monoskellion being another, the Pugilist being another. I guess the question is which ones of those are the absolute weakest. I actually do want to try out the Reclamation Sage in the main deck and see if we do end up blowing up some important artifacts and enchantments. Because there are some decks, like ours, that are going to have some really important artifacts and enchantments out. With our constellation triggers and stuff, I definitely like keeping the Shepherd of the Flock and the Core Skyfisher in here. They also work really well with Clarion Spirit to allow us to cast multiple spells by just bouncing something and replaying it. Renegade just being a cheap Death Toucher I kind of like, and with the bounce kind of spells, we can trigger Revolts without too much trouble. I guess, you know, saying it that way, Pugilist actually makes the least sense out of most of our creatures, because this is just kind of a big dork. I mean, it's a good large creature, but a 3/3 trample and then eventually an 8/8 trample. It's just like a big threat on the board. And I think our deck's more going to be about our smaller creatures becoming big threats with the big auras on them, or just a bunch of card advantage in general. So I kind of like cutting Pugilist here, maybe even the Renegade or the Fairy Guide Mother, but Guide Mother's kind of our only flyer to suit up with something like a Nettle Cyst or a Mantle of the Wolf. I guess we have Harmonious Archon as well, that is a big flyer too. Blessed Spirits flies as well? Yeah, maybe, but I do like having a lot of 1-mana cards to work with the Clarion Spirit. And we can have quite an aggressive curve. If we play a 1-mana creature on turn 1, like our Guide Mother, our Legion's Landing, or our Squirrel Sanctuary, and then play a Clarion Spirit turn 2, and then on turn 3 we play another 1-mana card plus 2-mana card, our board can get really wide really quickly, and that is just an exceptional aggressive start. Yeah, I don't want to cut too many 1-mana cards. I think I'm definitely cutting the Pugilist. We have several other 3-mana cards that I just like more here, so we'll cut the Pugilist, maybe keep the Renegade in, keep a pretty high creature count. 13 creatures plus Legion's Landing, Squirrel Sanctuary, that's 15 creatures, plus Nettle Cyst is 16 creatures, plus Battle for Bredegard is 17 creatures. I guess 17 is like just the average, we're not a super duper high creature count here. So cut 4 cards here. So I think Colony Ambush is one of our weaker removal spells. I think Trial of Solidarity didn't really work out. We didn't get any cartouches, and we didn't get the other trial. Although this is still an Anthem effect buff the whole field +2/+1 in vigilance till end of turn. There are gonna be some games where we have an aggressive enough start that this can just close things out. Again, those games where we start out curving out with the Clarion Spirit and getting a very wide board, Trial of Solidarity could absolutely be a game ender in those games. Don't know how super often it'll happen. I'm actually less excited about On Sarah's Wings than I would be normally because most of our creatures are pretty small, just like 2/2s and 3/3s, and On Sarah's Wings is one of those cards that's really impressive on one really big creature. Because it's all of the power in this card is really in stacking a bunch of good keywords onto something. So I guess this would be good on our Setessan Champion, be good on our like Nettle Cyst, our Blessed Spirits, but other than that, just throwing this onto like a 1/2 or a 1/3 or something is not very impressive in comparison to the Mantle of the Wolf, so that actually has me a little convinced that's one of our earliest cuts as well here. We have enough random tokens of different names that I definitely want to try out the Battle for Bredegard here. In Magical Christmas Land, where we've drawn all of our token producers, we could have a squirrel, a vampire, a spirit, a human, an elf, and make a copy of all those. I guess a wolf as well, if we're really living the dream. Yeah, we could make a lot of token copies on the third part of this saga, and even the first two parts are fine. So we need to cut 4 cards here. If I cut the Ambush, the Trial, and On Sarah's Wings, we still need to cut 1 more card. Might be looking to cut Rise of Extus a little bit here. What does our removal look like without it? We just have Faith's Fetters and Warbriar Blessing, and that is it. That is very low on removal then. Do we cut the Archon? Because it's just kind of a big dork here. Don't think so. Our average cost is 2.7. Pretty low. Just trying to see if we can cut a land here. We probably shouldn't, but maybe we could. We've got a lot of 1 mana stuff, 2 mana stuff. Don't need a million lands to operate. Oh yeah, Calyx's removal as well, so I guess we have Warbriar Blessing, Faith's Fetters, and Calyx. Rise of Extus is a lot of mana. You know what? I'm going to cut Rise of Extus. I'll go back to the drawing board in between rounds if I ever remember to. That's one thing I'm historically terrible at, is going back and making adjustments to the deck. But if I remember, then we can take into account how the deck plays out during matches, and if we end up in a lot of matches where we end up in a big board stall situation where we have 6 or more mana, and there's just something we really needed to kill, then those would be matches where the Rise of Extus would have came in really handy. So if we see that happening a lot, we can throw it in here and adjust the deck a little bit, take something that's underperforming out. But I'm pretty happy with this as the starting point. So yeah, we'll go for green-white Enchantress here. We're going to go with the Hand of Destiny, because we're kind of built around Calyx, Destiny's Hand. I swear, at some point I'll get better at naming decks, but for now, just in the interest of keeping things flowing, I'm just going to write down whatever the first thing that comes to mind is. Well, technically not the first thing. The first thing was just green-white Enchantress, but that's super basic. Gotta do something slightly fancy for it. So this is an excellent start if our opponent doesn't have cheap removal, because we will get Sithis Harvest's Hand out and draw some cards off of them. Our opponent starts with a turn 1 Gutter Bones, getting nice and aggressive here. 1 mana for a 2/1 that comes into play tapped that they can bring back from their graveyard to your hand. every time I have lost life in that turn. If I cast Sithis now, Sithis could just die to a removal spell from our opponent if they have a 2-mana removal spell. If I wait to cast Sithis until turn 4 or turn 5, I could cast an enchantment the turn that I play her and guarantee that I get value. I think I'm just going to slam her down and hope for the best. Because now if they don't have the removal, then I am immediately drawing a card off of Sithis. Plus I get to make her bigger with this +1/+1 counter stuff, which will protect her more. Oh wow, and we get Squirrel Sanctuary here. So a 1-mana enchantment to play. Probably do that in the future. For now, I do think I am casting Sparring Regimen. I'll take an Environmental Sciences. I'm not going to gamble on our opponent randomly playing an artifact or enchantment here. So we'll send in the attack with Sithis to get the +1/+1 counter on her and untap her. She's a little bit harder to remove now. That is a 2/3. Tabarak's Hope's Demise is our opponent's next play, a 2/2 flyer that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever one of their creatures dies. And if it was a cleric, they also draw a card and lose a life. And as soon as Tabarak's has 5 or more +1/+1 counters on it, also has lifelink, so that can just get absolutely massive. Alright, well, let's probably fight that with Warbriar Blessing here. We actually have multiple green mana too, so we can play Squirrel Sanctuary, gain a life, draw a card. We can play Warbriar Blessing, defeat their Tabaraks, gain a life, draw a card. Can I attack here? They have 3 power. I have 3 toughness left over right now, so if I attack, I do get a 4th toughness, so I absolutely can. Wow, this is just a ridiculous start from the Enchantress deck here. A 3/6 already, Sithis is. Thanks to that extra 2 toughness from Warbriar Blessing. And an Unwilling Ingredient is our opponent's next play, just a 1/1 menace they can exile from their grave to draw another card. So, we're really just rolling here. We are out of enchantments though, so we're not going to draw a card off of Sithis here. Kind of like Clarion Spirit plus Monoskellion, just play 2 cards here. But let's go ahead and draw a card off Tranquil Thicket first and see what we hit. Just another land. Sure, yeah, we'll go Clarion Spirit. And I should get another green source out here. Monoskellion. So I do get that Flying Spirit token. 2, 3, 4 power on our opponent's board. Sithis has 7 toughness here. Definitely get another attack in. They do block with that Unwilling Ingredient, and they have the mana to go ahead and exile it to draw a card and lose a life, but it looks like they chose not to. Sir Conrad the Grim is the play here. A 5/4, whenever anything dies or is put into the graveyard from anywhere, we lose a life, or we're dealt a damage, technically. And they can mill for 2 mana. Right, pretty scary, but our board is also very wide and scary, so we're doing pretty good. We can Heliod's Pilgrim. Pick up any aura from our deck here. Maybe get something to buff Sithis, or we could get something to get rid of Sir Conrad. The Faith's Fetters here, but we only have 2 mana up. Probably still grab Faith's Fetters and just save it for next turn. Definitely want to cast one more spell here. Kind of like just going for Environmental Sciences. Sithis is going to attack with 8 toughness, 5, 6, 7, 8. If they block with everything, they can kill Sithis here. But I could respond with a Monoskellion's ability at instant speed so that they can't. Yeah, let's attack with Sithis. Because even if they go for the triple block, Sithis is safe. And then I'll cast Environmental Sciences post-combat to get another Spirit token with Clarion Spirit. Alright, just a chump block with Gutter Bones because they can potentially recast that later. Fair enough. We will lose a life to Sir Conrad here. And then I will go ahead and cast Environmental Sciences. Just holding on to Fairy Guide Mother so that we can cast the Gift of the Fae for hopefully a lethal amount of damage, making one of our gigantic ground creatures a flyer. Mainly just Sithis here. Alright, so it's back to our opponent's turn. They go ahead and draw a card off the Unwilling Ingredient. Mill us with Sir Conrad. Well, that will tap out all of their mana for the turn. We just attack all here. How close to lethal are we? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hit them for 10 in the sky. It's incredibly close to lethal. I think Faith's Fetters gets there. So we'll just shut off Sir Conrad. Make it so they can't block Sithis. And then just attack all here, and it's almost definitely lethal. They can block our 2/2 here, then they take 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yep, and then use Monoskellion's ability for the last 1 damage. Alright. Well, that was a pretty ridiculous start to this draft. Very impressive showing from the Enchantress deck here. See if we can't just keep doing that. That, of course, was a hand where we got to play turn 2 Sithis, and our opponent didn't have any removal. So, a lot of things went in our favor that game, but the deck operated incredibly well. So here we are in round 2, and this is going to be a more standard, just green-white beats start here with a Clarion Spirit. Just going to try to go wide. So I think I'm going to try to use Gift of the Fae and Fairy Guide Mother to be the 2 spells for Clarion Spirit on turn 3, because I'm not going to want to play Reclamation Sage unless they have a good artifact or enchantment to blow up. So I'm just going to play Clarion Spirit turn 2, and then on turn 3 we'll cast both halves of Fairy Guide Mother to trigger the Clarion Spirit, not the Fairy Spirit. We also hit a Core Skyfisher, which is absolutely excellent with Clarion Spirit. Later in the game, we can just keep spending 4 mana, 2 mana to play Skyfisher, put it back in hand, then 2 mana to do it again, to just keep making a 1/1 flyer every turn. Which is a cute little combo, not the greatest thing ever, but definitely fun. Well, now I kind of do want to just Reclamation Sage to kill that 3/3 token that they got off of the Blade Splicer. Yeah, and that does keep us aggressive. I'm very fine with this. We also have Core Skyfisher in our hand to return our Reclamation Sage if they happen to play a better artifact or enchantment. So, our opponent going ahead and playing a 3/3 artifact creature there definitely changed our line quite a bit. We are not going to be attacking in the sky anytime soon now. The plan was to slap them in the sky for 4 with the Spirit, and then even more with some more stuff. So, looks like a blue-white flicker deck, I would guess, with 2 good Enter the Battlefield effects. The Master Splicers Enter the Battlefield effect, and the Blade Splicers Enter the Battlefield effect. So in white-blue in this format, there are a bunch of ways to flicker those creatures to get their effects going again. So what do I want to do here? I think our plan for turn 5, or our plan for whenever we hit another land, is going to be to pick up our Reclamation Sage and recast it to blow up that artifact token. For now, do I want to Warbriar Blessing to kill one of these 1/1s so they just have less cards to flicker? Probably not, because I need to get both of the Splicers off of the board if I want to stop them from creating more 3/3s, and that's not particularly likely to happen. Do we just go for the Fairy Guide Mother play this turn then, so I can cast 2 spells? Or do we cast a Calyx? Calyx doesn't do much for us here because we don't have an enchantment out to exile something with the minus ability, so I don't think we cast Calyx either. Let's just go for the Fairy Guidemother play here, I suppose. I expect the only creature they attack with here is going to be the Golem. Yeah, because they attack with the 1/1s, I'll trade with my 1/1s. And that would stop them from using any flicker effects. And there we go, there's the first flicker effect we see. A Core Skyfisher to bounce the Blade Splicer to hand to recast it for 3 here and get another Golem. Oh, Harmonious Archon would be good here, but we are far from casting that. Could try to just focus in on having a bunch of flyers to try to just fly over everything they're doing here. We need 3 power to kill that Skyfisher, and we do not have that. I guess I could just cast Mantle of the Wolf on one of our flyers and just start slamming in. Could also hold it back for blocks against these 4/4 tokens. They're at 14 here. I could try to race. I'll have some tokens to chump block with. Some chokens. Let's race a little here. Down to 9 they are. We're still at 16 here, but if I don't make any chump blocks this turn, we're going to go down to 8. That would be if they attack with just the 4/4s. Alright. The 4/4s and the 2/3 flyer coming in. I think I'm going to take it all. Down to 6 then, since they sent in the Core Skyfisher as well. Clarion Spirit of their own, followed by Bubble Snare. That's horrible for us. Probably just wins it, because that locks down the Fairy Guidemother without blowing up the Mantle of the Wolf. So we don't get to get the wolf tokens to block with on the ground. I guess we still have quite a few plays here. We're not like immediately dead, but we only have a 1/1 flyer to block with. I guess we'll have a Skyfisher this turn. Yeah, we'll have a lot of blockers. If we just play Skyfisher, blink the Sage, cast the Sage, we'll get another 1/1 chump blocker from the Clarion Spirit. We'll blow up one of the 4/4s. Yeah, this is not heinously bad. I guess I could pick up the Fairy Guidemother alternatively. That's actually a difficult decision. If I pick up Fairy Guidemother, Mantle of the Wolf goes into the grave, and I get 2 2/2s. So is it better to have 2 2/2s of my own, or blow up one of their 4/4s? It's probably better to blow up one of their 4/4s because they have First Strike. Like, they're just going to First Strike away a couple 2/2s. Yeah, I'm going to pick up the Reclamation Sage here. Oh, I could also blow up the Bubble Snare. But being at 6 life here, I think it probably is correct to kill a 4/4 over the Bubble Snare. But that is another thing I didn't factor in. This game has had a lot of complexity, a lot of options here these last couple turns. But I don't think that blowing up the Bubble Snare is the play, because we're down at 6 life here. Things are like real close. I guess it could be the play, because like we have the chump blockers to block the 4/4s. And then by blowing up the Bubble Snare, we'd have a 5/5 trying to bash back at them in the sky, and they're not really going to have the blockers to deal with that. Maybe we were supposed to blow up the Bubble Snare there. Alright, well now they have infinite blockers in the sky, so even if it was the correct play, not knowing what they were going to do, in hindsight, would not have worked out particularly well. So we can Warbriar Blessing to blow up one of their cards here. I like blowing up the Tide Skimmer, because it's just like one of their bigger flyers and it also draws them cards. And then we can play Calyx to blow up another card here. I guess we kind of want them to not draw cards, so shutting off Spectral Sailor seems good too. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead, blow up the Spectral Sailor so they don't have a mana sink to draw cards with. And we're gonna cast Calyx, which gives us another Spirit token from Clarion Spirit. So if they want to trigger Tide Skimmer and draw a card,
mortals have unbalanced our world.
they'll have to make a bad attack here, because I can block Tide Skimmer with a 2/3 and a 1/1 flyer all day long. I think I'm pretty good there. So do I exile the Golem token? Guess I can chump block with Sage, but yeah, I'm just going to keep chump blocking the Golem if I don't exile it here, so let's exile it here. Until they get rid of Mantle of the Wolf. Okay with them getting rid of Mantle of the Wolf, and it's a token, so it actually doesn't really matter what enchantment I target. That token will never come back. So their best play here is probably to just attack Calyx with all 4 flyers to try to clear that out, but that keeps the pressure off of my face, and it lets me block however I choose without worrying about what damage they're dealing, since Calyx would die no matter what if that's the play. So that would be my hope from our opponent here. Just attack Calyx with everybody. Nope. Tide Skimmer is not coming in, so we get to keep Calyx then. And we'll just trade off all the 1/1s. A land from our opponent, but they did draw another card off of Tide Skimmer, so still one more card in hand. But we are not going to see what it is. Monoskelion's really good on this board. We can blow up one of their splicers. So we can play the Monoskelion and just hold on to it to respond to them ever trying to flicker one. Well, that is unfortunate. No enchantments that we see from Calyx's +1 there. That is a big bummer. So I could play Harmonious Archon. That turns all creatures except the Archon into 3/3s. And they have 2 flyers, two 3/3 flyers, and we have a 4/5 flyer and a 3/3 flyer. Or we could just play Monoskelion and hold that to deal with their splicers. I don't love either of these lines. I'm gonna be really nervous facing a bunch of 3/3 creatures when I'm at 6 life. But we will have the bigger creatures. I'm gonna go with the Archon line. The other thing I don't like about the Archon line is we won't be able to kill the splicers in the future with our Monoskelion now. Let's see, they're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attackers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blockers, even if I attack with Rex Sage, so send it in, get a trade off, I guess. We just trade with a Splicer here. Doesn't accomplish much. Yeah, let's not attack here. But anyways, one of the things that I do like about playing Archon is now we have the 2-mana card still in our hand, so it'll be a lot easier to cast 2 spells in one turn if we happen to hit an enchantment off of Calyx, or just draw into another spell here. So we might get another Spirit token this way, and the Spirit tokens are now really important because every Spirit token is going to be a 3/3 flyer. So the player with the most flying creatures is very likely to be the player that wins this game. And unfortunately for us, our opponent did hit a Professor of Symbology, which is just 2 spells in a can, here being a card that learns. So that is just an incredible draw for them at this point. We do have a Sithis, which is a really good draw if we hit another enchantment here. So come on, Calyx. Calyx is failing us hard today. How many enchantments do I still have in the deck is the question. I have Legion's Landing, Sentinel's Eyes, Squirrel Sanctuary, Sparring Regimen, Battle for Bredegard, Faith's Fetters. I have 6 left in the deck. Just trying to make sure I don't only have like one left in the deck to where I should just expect Calyx to hit nothing here. Alright, well, we definitely cast both of these so that we can get our 1/1 Flying Spirit here to block their 1/1 Flying Spirit. And we also have a 4/4 on the ground to block their 3/3s on the ground. But we can't really attack in safely. So we just pass. We could be okay here. We are sitting behind a Planeswalker. That is letting us dig through the top 4 for an enchantment every turn. So odds are decent that we can draw at least a little better than our opponent can. Things are pretty much at parity here in terms of the creatures on our boards. We have one more creature than our opponent. Divide by 0. That's tremendously bad for me as well. That is going to learn another lesson, so it's going to give them 2 spells this turn, and by throwing Core Skyfisher back into their hand, they can repeatedly cast Core Skyfisher twice in a turn to get another 1/1 Spirit every single turn. But it looks like they're just going to go for another Enter the Battlefield effect here, maybe Professor of Symbology if they have more lessons. Or one of the Splicers. They're going to go for a Splicer here. So they're not going to go for the Infinite Spirits, they're going to go for the faster just to try and close out the game quickly here by making their board immediately larger. Alright, so we're going to our turn now. Battle for Bredagard. We'll create another spirit. It'll create another human and an elf. And a human here. Yeah, Battle for Bredagard is going to be good. See if we hit something on Calyx. We do hit Squirrel Sanctuary or Sparring Regimen. Sparring Regimen gives us Vigilance whenever we attack one of our creatures on taps. Actually, just excellent with the Harmonious Archon here. It'll be attacking as a 5/6, so I guess they could go for a multi-block and then everything becomes its normal power toughness again, but I think this is still definitely worth it here. Especially with Sithis out to gain life, draw a card. Grab Containment Breach, we can blow up their Bubble Snare here. That seems good. That'll give me a 1/1 Pest, which will be a 3/3 Pest. We get a Spirit because it'll be the second spell we cast this turn. Yeah, let's blow up the Bubble Snare, I think. Okay. So I guess if I attack with Archon, it's attacking as a 5/6, so they can just double block with 2 Spirit tokens, and I trade my Archon down into a Spirit token. Seems pretty horrible. Probably don't do that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 creatures. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just attack with a ground creature then. Since we can still hold it up as a blocker, and this will whittle down the number of potential attackers they have for the future. I guess maybe I should have killed the token first. I killed the Professor because with Calyx we can permanently get rid of tokens, even if they blow up the enchantments. But if we got rid of the token instead, the token will be a 4/4 whenever our Harmonious Archon dies, as you can see by the printed card, whereas the Symbology would just be a 2/1. So maybe I should have killed the Elemental token there. Alright, well now our Fairy Guidemother is untapped. With a bunch of buffs, the Fairy Guidemother is definitely going to kill a ton of creatures anytime it gets in. So just keep sending in a Fairy Guide Mother now, I think.
Patterned future appears before me.
We'll gain some more life, draw some more cards, get some more tokens. But I am feeling super duper mega safe here. I guess we can have double vigilance now. Nine power and 11 toughness, absolutely massive. They could block it with all of their flyers here. Oh, I guess they keep the Tide Skimmer, all but one of their flyers. And we'll clear all that out. We'll get our wolf tokens and be able to recast our Sentinel's Eyes now to gain more life, draw more cards. I think we just throw it onto a Spirit token now, because again, I don't want to attack with Archon because I want it to be around. Heliod's Pilgrim is the draw. Do I have any auras left in the deck? I don't think I do. No, we only have like 2 enchantments left. Legion's Landing and Squirrel Sanctuary. Alright, they scoop them up here. Kind of just have inevitability now with the flyers. We can pretty consistently cast 2 spells in one turn, whereas they can't, and we just have much bigger flyers, plus Calyx's ability to remove one of their flyers now. And then, of course, the Faith's Fetters in hand to get rid of one. We probably just had lethal next turn. So 2 wins and 0 losses to start off this draft with our green-white Enchantress deck. It's feeling pretty good. Seems like a very good strategy in this cube when it's open. One thing that I have noticed is I have played against a lot of green-white decks, so it might be overdrafted a lot of the time, but certainly in our draft pod, it was well enough open. So I'm going to keep this hand. We are stuck on 1 color of mana, so we can't cast our Nessian Warder, but other than that, this hand's pretty excellent. We have the Monoskellion curving out turn 2. And then we have Nettle Cyst, which could get pretty big in this deck, especially when we'll have 2 artifacts out, which isn't super common. And then the Heliod's Pilgrim can grab whatever kind of aura we need, which is pretty cool. So do I want to play Blessed Spirits here or Nettle Cyst? We don't have any enchantments in hand, so it's not like the spirits are going to get bigger, but they are going to be flying, whereas the Nettle Cyst will not. I think I want to just play the Spirits for a potential flyer here, because we're playing against green-red. They've played a Rootbound Crag and a Forest. So they're relatively likely to have some beefy creatures castable on the ground. Alright, improvised weaponry it is, so they were just going to blow up the Spirits. Nettle Cyst would have been a better play in hindsight then, since they would just be blowing up a Germ token. Although I suppose then they could just blow up the Monoskellion. So, do I Heliod's Pilgrim just to grab an aura to thin out the deck a little bit, so we can get a little closer to drawing a green source? Or do I just curve out with the most aggressive creature than Nettle Cyst? I think I'm still on aggro here. Let's plop down a Nettle Cyst. Definitely got our fingers crossed for the green source, but our opponent hasn't put anything on the board yet, so we're fine for now. Essica's Chariot. Well, that'll immediately turn things around. Their board is now significantly better than ours. Essica's Chariot creates 2 2/2 cats, and then they can crew it for 4, and every time it attacks, they create another cat token. Essica's Chariot, one of those cards that seems to be the bane of my existence. I feel like I run up against it just a boatload in every format. So think now we are just dropping a Heliod's Pilgrim. The Shepherd isn't going to do much. So, Fate's Fetters is the only thing that could like shut down the chariot itself, and Sentinel's Eyes doesn't do much for us here, and we don't even have the green mana for the blessing, so I think it's just Faith's Fetters here. Pass the turn. Actually pretty okay with double blocking Essica's Chariot with our Monoskellion and our Nettle Cyst, because we are definitely on the back foot here. We just have to try to survive. So getting rid of their biggest threat by far seems like a decent deal to me, even if it is 2-for-1ing ourselves. It is at the cost of a simple Germ token. We will still have the Nettle Cyst around to equip onto other cards later when we have the mana to spare. So it's pretty fine. And now we get to keep our Faith's Fetters to use on something else. If they have an instant speed burn spell here, we are pretty out of it. But we would, whether or not we blocked here. Giant's Growth. I think that was pretty much our one hope there was on that block. Unless we draw land right now for the Fetters. We do draw land right now. Okay. So we do have a chance here. That block does definitely look really bad now. But that was our only opportunity to kill Chariot that we knew we had an opportunity. Like, there's just no guarantee of what you draw any turn. So there was no guarantee we were going to cast Faith's Fetters anytime soon. But we knew we could attempt the block there. Samut the Tested. Give a creature double strike every turn. Deal 2 damage, divided as you choose among 2 targets. Seems good. I think we're just too far on the back foot after a slow start here. What can we do to come back? Well, that's a start, drawing a cheap aura to cast with Nessian Wanderer to potentially hit more lands here. Yeah, that's definitely the line. We play our Wanderer, turn it into a 2/4 so we can actually block one of their 2/2s, and draw land off the top. Perfect. Another land from the Wanderer. That's excellent. We can even slap a Nettle Cyst onto it now, or cast a Shepherd of the Flock. I don't love casting the Shepherd of the Flock here because Usher to Safety could be pretty useful in the future. I think I'm just going to slap a Nettle Cyst onto the Wanderer. Make it very big. It's now a 5/7 Vigilance. And they can give something double strike all day long. It's not really going to break into a 5/7 when they're just giving a 2/2 double strike. Alright. Things went from abysmal to somewhat stable, but our opponent still has 4 cards in hand we have to worry about, and every single one of those could change things again. 1 removal spell puts us right back into the precarious situation that we were in earlier. And there's the 1 removal spell, but it's not enough damage. They'll have to follow it up with another removal spell here to finish off the Wanderer. So while they are going to clear it out of the way, at least it's costing them 2 of their 4 cards here, which will be a good deal. They might sacrifice Samut to get it out of the way. Is that the play here? They do. Alright, so we got to get rid of Samut and a Welding Sparks from their hand. Definitely on the back foot, but every spot where they get them to 2-for-1 themselves gets them, or gets us, mildly closer to finding a way to stabilize. Nardum Renegade does come out as a 1/2, but it has Death Touch. could throw it out here and then slap the Nettle Cyst onto it to make it a 2/3. Or I could throw the Mantle of the Wolf onto it to make it really big, and then if it does die, we'll get multiple wolf tokens. Yeah, let's go Narnum Renegade, slap a Mantle of the Wolf on it. So now we have a blocker, and even if it dies, we have 2 other blockers. And I almost feel like if we survive this turn, it might be best to return our Narnum Renegade to our hand to spit out those 2 wolf tokens and then recast it as a 2/3. Because we would use Usher to safety to turn our 1/5/6 into a 2/3 and 2 2/2s, and a 2/3 and 2 2/2s might actually just be better on this board, because we need to be able to block multiple creatures here. Like, we're just in such a world of pain here, taking 5 damage now, going to 5 life. Never mind, they just had lethal with the giant pump spell. It just took them a little while to realize that. Sad. Was definitely not expecting to die right then and there after the pre-combat considerations. But Hunt of the Wild Speaker will certainly get there. Alright. So here we are in round 4, 2 and 1 to start things off. Here we do have both colors, which is super sweet. We have Setessan Champion with 2 4-mana auras to follow it up with. Hand looks very good. We're going to play our Tranquil Thicket turn 1 here, because unless we draw land literally every turn for quite a while, I don't think we'll be wanting to cycle that. Alright, playing against a red-green deck here, we do hit a Temple Garden. We'll play that tapped because we have nothing to play turn 2 here. Garruk's Uprising. When it enters the battlefield, if they control a creature with power 4 or greater, they draw a card. Their creatures have trample, and when they play creatures with power 4 or greater, they draw another card. Alright, well, let's slam down a Setessan Champion, have our fingers crossed, and hope for the best. No welding sparks or anything from our opponent here. This is basically their one opportunity to kill it with green-red removal, and they have missed the opportunity with a Fierce Witchstalker as the play per turn, because now we are going to make this way larger than they will probably be able to remove with a Mantle of the Wolf here. A 6/8. Most of the removal in green and red is going to be damage based. It's going to be quite hard to stack up 8 damage. So hopefully the Setessan Champion is pretty safe here. And if it is, we are going to absolutely go off because we have more enchantments to cast. Sentinel's Eyes, Faith's Fetters, some great stuff. Opponent does make a Death Toucher here, so we can't attack into that Death Toucher without flying. But we can give our Setessan Champion flying here to find lethal pretty quickly. We can't do it immediately, but soon enough. So, let's see. Let's just stack a bunch of stuff onto Setessan Champion and see how close to lethal we can get here. We can attack for 11 damage in the sky, using Fairy Guide Mother to give +2 power to the champion here. We can definitely find lethal next turn if our champion is still around, thanks to the ability to move a Nettle Cyst onto it. So I think we just go ahead and pop the Death Toucher for now so we can get the attack in this turn. Force them to block with Pelt Collector here. So we get a nice 2-for-1 deal, clearing out a lot of their stuff on board. I guess there was an alternate line there where we could have just Faith's Fetters Vraska and used Monoskellion to kill the Death Toucher, and then just kept sending the champion at their face, but I am hoping to send the champion in for lethal here with flying, and they are tapped out. A Faith's Fetters to shut down their reach blocker, plus a Fairy Guide Mother to give champion flying will be pretty dang close to lethal. Not quite going to get there yet, though. That's certainly the play. Shut down that Hydra. Ooh, Heliod's Pilgrim's pretty excellent here. Grab a Warbriar Blessing. I can hit them for 12 in the sky if I really, really want to. Don't think I do. I think I would rather hit them for 14 in the sky next turn. More Death Touchers from our opponent, more creatures on the ground. We've still got the Gift of the Fae as our game plan here. Alright, there we go. Another enchantment. We can slap a Nettle Cyst onto the champion, or we can grab an enchantment with Heliod's Pilgrim. It's 5 mana to slap this on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to cost all our mana to do that. If we play Legion's Landing, we draw a card, then we spend 3 on Pilgrims. That's 4 mana total to play Landing plus Pilgrim. We would have 3 mana after that. We need 2 to do Gift of the Fae. We don't have a 1 mana aura left in the deck. Our one mana aura is Sentinel's Eyes, so we can't grab another enchantment off Heliod's Pilgrim to get to lethal. We have to go for the Nettle Cyst if I'm trying to hit for lethal this turn. Well, they have an instant here. Let's see how bad it is for us. Because if it's target creature they control, fights a creature they don't control, they can shut this lethal off right here. But if it's not, this is mega dead. Oh, it's just the food token gaining them 3 life there. And they scoop them up. Completely forgot about the food token that they got off the Fierce Witch Stalker. I would have felt a lot safer knowing that that was probably what was giving them priority. And I also might have miscalculated lethal damage. Or I could have miscalculated lethal damage, since I just completely didn't take into account the food token. So glad that didn't come back to bite me. This hand seems pretty excellent. Just get a nice little squirrel friend turn 1. Potentially get more squirrels if our non-token creatures die. We're definitely playing a super sweet Sparring Regimen turn 3 here. I guess I could curve out with Core Skyfisher turn 2 to pick up Squirrel Sanctuary. I kind of like that. If we hit an untapped land, then we still get to do Sparring Regimen this next turn. And if we don't, we still get to just like play a squirrel here, so it's not like we're completely taking off our next turn. Ooh, we are just running into this game. Sparring Regimen's going to come right on out. We're going to grab Environmental Sciences here. Send in with the squad. Make the squirrel big enough to beat their 1/1. Excellent start for us, hitting that 3rd untapped land. Playing against a green-white deck, stuck on 2 lands, but they do have Dryad of the Elysian Grove and Caryatid, mana fixing them and giving them a little bit of ramp. Let's just stay mega aggressive here, I think. Try to cheese out this game before they hit enough mana to survive some stuff. I'm going to keep buffing this squirrel because I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, but I suppose if I had buffed the Skyfisher, we would have had lethal and flying damage next turn. Yeah, I didn't take that math into account. Should have buffed the Skyfisher there. Just get in for 1 more damage. That'd be putting them down to 8. And the next time that it would attack, it would hit them for that 8. Okay. Heliod's Pilgrim, does that make it lethal? No, for 1 mana we just have like Sentinel's Eyes. It's not going to be lethal this turn either way, but it's going to be pretty big for us. I do think I want to grab Sentinel's Eyes though. Now I can keep putting the tokens onto the scroll, so the scroll is now forcing chump blocks as well. If our opponent takes this game back, they have absolutely earned it here. Because I did miss lethal. We would have killed them with Core Skyfisher if I just put a counter on it last turn and this turn. But since I didn't put a counter on it last turn, might as well keep doing the squirrel play there. And just a Godzilla here, King of the Monsters. They are tapped out. That is going to end this game. Just a quick victory with the Mantle of the Wolf ridiculousness. Sparring Regimen into Mantle of the Wolf as well. Really massive attacks in the sky super early in the game, plus our opponent was stuck on mana for a bit there. Not the most interactive game ever, but that will send us into round 6 with a very winning record, 4 wins and 1 loss. Only takes 5 wins to break even in this format, so we're getting really close to that. Certainly excited about that. This hand is not the greatest cube hand ever. This is very close to a mulligan, but the fact that we have both colors and some castable cards later in the game makes me still okay with the keep. The risk here, though, is if we don't draw any early game cards like 1 to 3 mana cards. We've got a lot in our deck. We have 4 1-drops, we have like 6 2-drops, and quite a few 3-drops. Ooh, Sith is one of the best 2-drops in the deck. If I wait 1 more turn, I can cast Sithis and Warbar Blessing in the same turn and guarantee that I get some card draw out of Sithis. But they're playing white-blue here, so they're pretty much equally likely to be able to counter Sithis as they are to be able to exile her off the board or anything like that. So I kind of like just casting her down here. See if it pans out for us or not. If they just go Mountain Burn spell, I will cry. Maybe even openly. Uh-oh. Green source fight spell? No, green source Beanstalk Giant to grab a basic land, throw it into play. They grab another blue source, so they're not like 4 colors or anything. And Silent Departure gonna slow us down, slap our Sithis right back into our hand, but that's fine by us. We can just recast Sithis and cast Warbriar Blessing to kill that Spectral Sailor here, gain a life, and draw a card. So that really doesn't slow us down too badly at all. Alright, so whatever happens with Sithis now, we did get a good deal. We got to blow up their Spectral Sailor and draw a card off of Sithis' effect. So even if we draw no more cards off of Sithis, we're doing solid there. And looks like we are going to keep drawing cards because a Staggering Insight onto the Night Veil Sprite is their play for the turn. So still no interaction to deal with Sithis. So every time that Night Veil Sprite hits us, they draw a card, and every time it attacks, they surveil one. So I do really like the idea of shutting down that card draw from our opponent. So I think I will cast a Faith's Fetters here to shut that off. It's 1 less removal spell that we can have against their giant Beanstalk Giant. I mean, their literal giant in the future. But that's still a few turns away. And we should be able to make some really big creatures of our own with cards like Mantle of the Wolf. Clarion Spirit. And another card to follow it up, Trial of Strength. Alright. So, they do have enough mana to flashback Silent Departure now to return something to our hand, which can really screw with our auras. But Mantle of the Wolf does give us some repayment. Even if it does get destroyed, we get 2 wolves. So I kind of like Nessian Wanderer, and then throw a Mantle of the Wolf onto it. And if they bounce the Wanderer, no big deal. We get a couple wolves, so that's fine. Alright, and now we have an answer for their Beanstalk Giant. We can just exile it. We could also just turn it into a 3-3 with Harmonious Archon, try to get this game to where we're just trying to have more creatures out than they are, but they have a Clarion Spirit on board, so that's a little bit of a risky play to go for that. Alright, well they are really suiting up this Spirit token, so kind of do like just getting rid of that with our Calyx. Risen Reef from our opponent, they have all the card draw. Alright. So, if I get rid of that Spirit token with Calyx, Calyx is going to die to their other Spirit token unless I just cast Fairy Guidemother as a blocker. They could still attack Calyx with everybody to kill Calyx. Wouldn't be great, but then we get to chip away at some of their creatures, which would be okay. Could play Calyx and use the plus ability, but then the Spirit's just going to keep gaining life and drawing cards. Or I guess it doesn't gain life, it just draws cards. It doesn't have the Staggering Insight, it just has the Curious Obsession. Just play Archon now? I feel like we don't play Archon, but Archon would be a 4-5 against their 3-3. Actually, it'll be a 5-5 if we turn it into a 3-3 with Archon, because it'll have base power 3-3. Yeah, no, Archon's terrible here, because the Spirit's going to be base a 3-3 with +2/+2 on it. I think we kind of have to just let Calyx probably die here to get rid of the Spirit. It doesn't matter what enchantment we target, a token's never going to come back. And then I will go ahead and cast Fairy Guidemother to force them into a big attack to kill Calyx, or force them to bounce our Fairy Guidemother to kill Calyx. Otherwise, they can just send a single Spirit token at Calyx to get him off the board. Sithis Harvest Hand of their own. And they do have Sentinel's Eyes in their graveyard. They could cast it on their flyer and attack Calyx here. They are going to Silent Departure here. Alright, well, we'll get our wolves. Send for Calyx and we'll take the trade to get the card draw off of Calyx next turn, hopefully. Clarion Spirit is the draw. Excellent draw here. But Calyx hits no enchantments again. Calyx has not been a good friend to us today. If I want Calyx to survive, I need at least one flyer here, so Clarion Spirit and then whatever my next spell is going to be. Now Harmonious Archon's actually pretty decent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll have 5 creatures on the ground and 2 in the sky. They'll have 5 creatures on the ground and 1 in the sky. Yeah, Harmonious Archon actually kind of slaps here. And we do our big protect Calyx with the gigantic board thing again. They can play a Beanstalk Giant, but it's just another 3-3. Archon really shuts things down here. They have a Sentinel's Eyes. They can throw it and make 1 4-4, but 1 4-4 flyer still gets blocked by a 4-5 all day long. Feeling very good here. Alright, ooh, a cycling land. What do we cycle into? Sparring Regimen? Don't mind if I do. That lets us keep attacking without tapping down a creature. Super excellent. Let's see what Calyx hits. Legion's Landing, which shouldn't be too hard to flip. We draw a card off of each of these. Let's go Nessian Wanderer. Kind of like Sparring Regimen here. Draw into Squirrel Sanctuary, which is also excellent. Pick up a land, pick up a Containment Breach. I don't really want to cast any more spells here because I want to save them for more Clarion Spirit activations. I attack with the flyer. It'll be a 4/4, so we can trade with their 4/4. So they make no blocks there. Warden of Evos Isle, a 3/3 flyer here. We can keep getting those with our Clarion Spirit, with our ways to keep drawing cards, our Sithis and Calyx. Curiosity on their flyer. With the Sithis out, they do draw another card from doing that. They get another Spirit with the Clarion Spirit. Very similar stuff going on from both boards. Ooh, Heliod's Pilgrim. What auras do we have left in the deck even? Sentinel's Eyes, and that's pretty much, that is literally it, I think. So that is not excellent. Alright, Calyx, what are we going to hit here? Nothing. Alright.
Clothis, show me my path.
Well, gain a life, draw a card, get a 1/1, grab a land. I do need to not mill myself. But we still have like 15 cards here, so we're still pretty safe to just keep having an excellent time. That being said, I'm gonna stop picking up extra lands. Gonna stop digging through the deck quite so fast. So I guess they can double block this flyer with 2 3/3s now, so it's not the most impressive attack ever anymore. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 attackers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 blockers. I can attack with 3 creatures pretty freely. And I would like to do that to flip Legion's Landing so we can keep making more tokens with that. So let's just attack with 3 3/3s, I think. One of which will turn into a 4/4 here. And now we just start doing the Adonto thing to keep making lifelinkers on the ground. Hopefully overwhelm our opponent by just having the larger board. No blocks at all, okay. Pass turn. Again, saving our spells to cast 2 spells in 1 turn with the Clarion Spirit out. Bubble Snare on Harmonious Archon. Doesn't do anything. Omen of the Sun, a couple 3/3s. And a 1/1 flyer, pretty good. Oh my god, I could have destroyed Sithis and stopped them from drawing all these extra cards. Totally forgot Sithis is an enchantment. Alright, we should have definitely cast Containment Breach a while ago to blow up Sithis. I was just trying to look through my hand to see what my other options were through these turns, and yeah, Containment Breach would kill a Sithis. Ooh, Shepherd the Flock. Get an ETB effect again. Pretty cool. Well, let's get rid of that spirit, I suppose.
My light banishes you from this world.
Get rid of that Sithis. Cast 1 spell here. Shepherd of the Flock return Warbriar Blessing, I guess, for our next spell per turn to get another flyer. Now we can blow up another card just by using a fight spell. Alright, they're just going to scoop them up here. It's going to be a bit of a war of attrition here, but we can just keep sending in with a bunch of stuff, leaving exactly enough creatures to block all their stuff. Alright, but that will lead us into 5 wins, which is 4,000 gold and 3 cards as the rewards. It does cost 4,000 gold to enter these events, so we are breaking even if nothing else here. Excellent, excellent time with the green-white enchantments deck. Heading into round 7 now. We're in the big leagues now. And this hand is excellent. Turn 2 Nessian Wanderer into a turn 3 Battle for Bredegard. And a turn 4 Calyx. Nettle Cyst will be the later gameplay once we have a bunch of enchantments to try to close things out with just a boatload of damage. I'd rather get my Constellation Sugars out of Nessian Wanderer as quickly as possible. So we'll be casting our enchantment turn 3, our Battle for Bredegard Saga. Creating some 1/1s. Heliod's Pilgrim is a pretty great draw here because the Pilgrim's whatever we need. It can be a massive game-ending aura like Mantle of the Wolf, or it can be a removal spell like Face Fetters. Do we cast Heliod's Pilgrim here? I don't think so. I think we save that for when we know for sure what we want to get. There's an alternate curve we could have definitely gone for there, which would have been to just cast Heliod's Pilgrim this turn and just pick up a Mantle of the Wolf, just start just drilling into our opponent. But I am a coward, and I like staying flexible, making sure I can pick up removal if I need it. We have Calyx that could be removal, but only as long as we control an enchantment. So our opponent's on blue, green, and black here. We see 2 islands and a green-black dual land, the Thriving Grove. And an Obsessive Stitcher is the play for turn, so a Reanimator kind of deck here. They can draw a card and discard a card off of this, and then they can spend 4, tap it, sacrifice it, return a creature from their grave to the battlefield. Legion's Landing is pretty sweet here to play that before this saga goes off so we get another token. Nettle Cyst is not getting another 0/0, it will just die immediately. So I kind of definitely like slamming down Legion's Landing. But other than that, I do like casting Heliod's Pilgrim here. And grabbing the Faith's Fetters to be really safe. So we can deal with whatever that Stitcher's going to bring back. And we get in for 1 damage here. Harmonious Archon would actually be a really sweet draw here because it's going to turn our field of 1/1s into a field of 3/3s. So that would be pretty cool if we get there. So our opponent now has 4 mana up. They can use the Stitcher's Reanimate effect, but they don't have anything in their grave to reanimate quite yet. There's very pretty artwork on the Obsessive Stitcher. It's pretty gross, but it's also just pretty. Again, this also shows off why I don't really like the parallax effects. If you look at the far left of the Stitcher's body, you can see where it mirrors itself to where the back like is growing up again. I can't like point it out with my arrow because if I go over there then you can't see it as well, but like the curve of the back starts going back up. But it kind of works with this artwork. Because then, like, if you think of it mirrored, it's like a disgusting blob where there's people coming out of both halves. Which could be pretty cool. Like the Rat King in The Last of Us 2. Feed the Swarm. I'm going to go ahead and destroy our Battle for Bredegard, which basically let them play that as a 3-for-1 removal spell, destroying a vampire, an elf warrior, and a human warrior that we would have gotten had they not destroyed that. Well, that's a bummer. Do I cast a Faith's Fetters here to just get rid of the Stitcher? How does Calyx work if your enchantment flips till it leaves the battlefield? Transform it. How does transform work? Transform is like it leaves the battlefield and then comes back flipped, right? It counts as leaving the battlefield? Or does it not count as leaving the battlefield? Goblet's back again with the big rules questions. Well, I don't really want to risk it. I would play Calyx and just exile Stitcher under the Legion's Landing if it would work even after flipped, but I don't know if it will, so let's play... Just like slam in with everybody, cast a Nettle Cyst here, I guess. You get to flip the Legion's Landing here, which is nice. And I'm pretty okay with them reanimating whatever they want, because I do have the Faith's Fetters that I picked up to be safe. Picked that up with the Heliod's Pilgrim. So we don't need to just Faith's Fetters the Stitcher. So let's cast Nettle Cyst and cycle our Tranquil Thicket to draw a card, I guess. Yeah, 1/1 Nettle Cyst. It is the only artifact or enchantment on the board right now. They cycle a Neutralize, which would have been a counter spell. Draw and discard off the Stitcher. Oh, you know what? I have 1 and 2 mana cards in this deck. I should have cycled the Tranquil Thicket during our turn. We don't have that much going on at instant speed, and we don't have anything instant speed in hand. I don't know why I decided to cycle at the last opportunity. I guess it's just a force of habit doing your instant speed effects as late as possible. But it's possible by cycling now we could have drawn into like a Sithis or something and cast it during our main phase. Whereas now we won't be able to cast it if we hit a 2 or less cost card. So here's Lazav, which is a really fun card. They look at the top card of their library and they can put it in the grave if they want. And for X mana, they can have Lazav become a copy of anything in their grave that costs X. So right now they have 3 mana, so they could turn Lazav into a copy of any creature that costs 3 or less in their grave, which would be currently just a Skull Prophet. But a Callous Blood Mage, if that dies, would be another target. Neither of those are particularly good, but they would be options for Lazav. So Callous Blood Mage is coming out, drawing a card when it comes into play. Let's go ahead and draw off the Tranquil Thicket here. Hopefully not hit a 2 mana card, that would be the big punishment. Alright, we did just hit a land, so it would not have mattered. So now that I have a Sithis, I'm a little bit more excited about casting a Faith's Fetters than I would have been otherwise. So now do we Faith's Fetters a Stitcher? It'll also make our Nettle Cyst larger. I kind of like Faith's Fettersing Lazav, actually, because then I get to attack with everybody here. Yeah, Lazav is the only creature that makes attacking with my 1/1s bad. So let's just shut Lazav off so I can attack with everybody here and stay aggressive. They're at 10 life. Let them keep doing that Stitcher thing. we will still have plenty of cards to play around with, even if they like Wrath the Board or something here, or if they make some trades here. So we are more than ready to just send all this in. Alright, so they are going to trade with the lifelinker and go down to 4 life here. Against a pretty wide board. Draw and discard with Stitcher. See what they're discarding here. They're thinking on it quite a bit. Shipwreck Dowser it is. Alright, that is not likely to matter. I can't foresee them returning that with a reanimation spell. Five cards in hand, but they're at 4 life, facing down 6 creatures. They have 1 blocker. Oh, well, Unbreakable Bond gives them a life-linking creature, but Calyx can clear that right out of the way since they are tapped out. So even if that would save them here, which I don't think it does, they gain 3 and block that, so they're essentially at 7. They take 5. I guess it would save them here, but Calyx can just clear that out of the way with the -3 effect. Calyx has been quite good in these games. The +1 ability has not been working out for us, but the -3 ability has always been worth Calyx being in the deck. And they scoop him up there, saying that Calyx's -3 can get rid of that Dowser, exiling it underneath our Sithis, because we do have that 1 enchantment on the board. That is the one we would have to target. Alright, 6 wins and 1 loss now, only 1 win away from a 7-win run. The highest we can get the full trophy here. So this could be the final boss if we win this round. If not, we do get 1 more shot after this. So we're in a pretty great position. Pretty gate position. That's when you're sitting behind all your guild gates and you're ready for your Maze's End to win the game. Alright, let's keep this hand. Our opponent is on the play, but this hand is pretty fast, so even though we're not on the play, we might be on the aggressive. We'll have to see. Spawning a 1/1 lifelink on turn 1, and we can even make it bigger with our Sentinel's Eyes. Horde Robber is the play from our opponent. I don't like it when my opponent gets treasure tokens. That has been pretty brutal for me in this format, so I think I'm just going to cast a Sentinel's Eyes on our Vampire token to make it big enough to block that Horde Robber without dying, and then we're just going to straight up block it. I'm surprised by the no blocks from them there, but I'll take it. I'm going to go ahead and cycle the Tranquil Thicket here. We only need at least 4 mana in this hand. And we have all 4 mana that we need already, so we're likely to hit more lands by turn 5 anyway, if we do want to hit like a 5th or 6th mana. So pretty safe to cycle Tranquil Thicket here, I think. Ooh, Reclamation Sage, not like awesome on this board. There's nothing really to target with it, but could be good to have in the future. And I guess I could cast it right now so I have something to block their 2/1. They seem to be mono black so far. Not sure how likely they are to be playing a lot of artifacts or enchantments. I think I'm just going to play Narnum Renegade here. Hold on to this Reclamation Sage. It has done me well in the past. There's trade there. Our Death Toucher won't be around for their bigger creatures if we do that. Could trade with the Vampire token. It's not likely to be relevant too much longer, whereas the Renegade will. I guess we have Mantle of the Wolf. Throwing a Mantle of the Wolf onto the lifelink token will be relevant for a long time to come. I'm just going to take the 2. And with lifelink, like, we can take the 2 damage. Parasitic Implant. So the Renegade's going to die and give them a 1/1 mirror. This is such a cool card flavorfully. It's like the alien within bursts out of our Renegade and onto our opponent's field to fight us. Terrifying card flavorfully. We are going to go ahead and just get in with a super big lifelinker now. 6/6 Vigilance lifelink. Sir Conrad the Grim is the play from our opponent. A 5/4 with a bunch of decent abilities. If we get rid of Sir Conrad here, they will be down to 4 power of creatures, so getting rid of Sir Conrad will make it so our 6/6 gets to attack in again, so I think that's going to be the play here. Cast Calyx to get rid of Sir Conrad. And I'm actually going to trap Sir Conrad under the Legion's Landing, because it's not likely to flip anytime soon, so even if that interaction doesn't work how I want it to, we'll just, like, we're not planning on flipping Legion's Landing this game. Whereas if I exile Sir Conrad under my my Vampire token, under the Mantle or the Sentinel's Eyes, then if they have a single removal spell that they draw into to kill the Vampire token, that will be a horrifically bad deal for me. So I don't want to exile it under there.
Destiny draws me elsewhere.
Nettle Cyst make our Vampire token even bigger in the future. They only have 3 power here, so we don't need to do that right now. Let's just send in Chump Block with the Dire Fleet Quarter, because it turns into a treasure token when it dies, so it gives them some value there. I guess Reclamation Sage gives us a little bit of value here, killing just a 1/1 mirror, but it's not that exciting, so I'm just going to go a little wide here. I do need to remind myself not to attack with 3 or more creatures, just in case the Legion's Landing pops out the Sir Conrad. Right, so they do have the Meteor Golem now to blow up the Vampire token. Ooh, Sithis Harvest's Hand. Excellent, excellent draw here. Cast Sithis. Draw a card. Now we can Sentinel's Eyes onto the Germ to make that a really big attacker. Draw another card, gain another life. That's going to be a 5/5 now. We can Reclamation Sage to blow up their 3/3 blocker here. We are really just tinkering all over this cube. And there's the concession from our opponent, a ridiculous string of plays that turn to get right back into the swing of things, even after the 6/6 Vigilance lifelink token got blown up. So really excellent run for the Enchantress deck here. Definitely, I think, one of the strongest synergies in the format. And we get a very good run out of it, as we did with the Rakdos deck the first time around. So here's one final look at the deck list. Super solid stuff all around. I think Nettle Cyst underperformed a bit. There was the one game where it really slapped. Equipped onto the champion. Like, I'd definitely still run it in here, but I was very excited to be running Nettle Cyst when I started here. What really overperformed here? Mantle of the Wolf was absolutely absurd, but that's to be expected. Sithis was insane, as to be expected. Clarion Spirit did a lot in this deck, And Harmonious Archon, the card I was mildly considering cutting, won us a lot of games. Just in conjunction with the token production that we have in this deck, just getting a board that is wider than our opponents can often win things with the Archon. And the Archon just getting things cluttered so that we could sit behind a large board to protect Calyx was also quite good, so really nice stuff overall from the deck. And quite a fun round of games. For the prizes, we get a Selective Snare and a Perilous Vault and some gems. Always nice to get some extra gems out of it. But yeah, pretty fantastic Tinkerer's Cube draft run for the third draft this time around. As always, if you watched the video and you enjoyed it, then you can like, comment, subscribe if you want to let the YouTube algorithm know to feed you more of these videos. But if you just want to see more of them, stick around. I'll have plenty more on the channel in the near future. And as always, thank you all for watching. I will see you again very soon for some more Magic Arena.